This is Local Legends with your hosts, Cameron Clovis, Jordan Erb, and Justin Boyer.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm your host Jordan.
I'm Justin.
And Cameron.
We're back to you guys today with our first segment, Game Time. We're gonna start off with some college football picks. First game, we got number 5 Oregon versus number 3 Washington. Who do you guys think is gonna win this game?
I mean, this one's going to be close. It's going to be a good game, I think.
I agree. This one's going to be really close. What do you think, though? Who's going to win?
I honestly think this is going to be, obviously it's the Pac-12 championship, and I think winner goes into the college football playoffs, and I think Washington got him the first time, but I think Oregon's going to get him this time.
Man, I don't know. Washington's passing offense is it's almost unstoppable, and I think Washington's learned from their past game against Oregon. I think they're gonna use those mistakes and go ahead, and I think they're gonna beat Oregon again.
Yeah, like we said, this is gonna be a really close game, but honestly, just based on Washington's last game against WSU, I mean, they didn't quite look like the super high level team we've seen kind of all year. So I don't know, ever since Washington's beat Oregon has just been unstoppable. They've made almost no mistakes. So I think Oregon just might continue their streak and beat Washington.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Our next college football game, we got Georgia, who's number 1 versus number 8 Alabama.
Now, this one, I don't know. I don't really like Alabama, and I also don't really like Georgia because Georgia, I don't think they deserve the number 1 seed. They're kind of not been playing as well, and they've really played no-name teams. So, you know what? I think I was going to go with Georgia, sadly, but I wish Alabama would win.
I think this game is going to be a really big talking point of the whole college football playoffs. I think if Alabama wins, then it's going to completely turn the tides on the whole championship, and it's going to be a really interesting matchup.
Yeah.
But with Georgia being that number 1 seed, being back-to-back champions, I can't vote against them. I think Georgia's going to win this game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of them. I'm not much of a fan of either team, but I think just based off of just Georgia's schedule this year, they haven't played hardly any super tough opponents, and Alabama has definitely had a much tougher schedule. They've got beaten once, so they're not coming into the game with any extremely high expectations. And I mean, honestly, I'm not sure I should ever bet against Nick Saban, so I think I'm going to have to give Alabama getting the upset on this one.
That's true.
That's an interesting pick.
You got it. You can never underestimate good old Nick Saban. He's been doing this for a while.
Yeah. In our last college football matchup, we got number 2 Michigan versus number 18 Iowa.
This one, Michigan all the way. They just got off the game with Ohio State. They beat Ohio State, and they played a really good game. I think that's just going to roll over, and they're going to destroy Iowa.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I mean, Michigan and Ohio State, it was a good game, but Michigan just played some super solid football. And, I mean, honestly, I watched ESPN the other day, and they said, they were talking about this game, and they said pretty much that this game doesn't even matter because everyone knows Michigan is just such a clear favorite that everyone thinks they're going to win. And I'm going to have to agree. I think right now Michigan is by far the highest lock for the college football playoffs, and I just think Iowa is not going to even touch them, really.
It also helps that the Michigan's head coach is back after his 3-game suspension.
That's right.
That's very true.
Jim Harbaugh's back.
I'm not a big college football fan, but it seems to me like Michigan could be a number 1 seed. I did watch that Michigan versus Ohio State game, and I do think that they're going to win this game pretty easily, but we'll see. I got Michigan in that game. Next up, we got some college basketball picks. We got number 4 UConn versus number 5 Kansas.
Ooh. College basketball, UConn versus Kansas. I think, honestly, on this one, well, first of all, I think this is going to be an amazing game. You know, top 5 matchup. This is going to be a super close game, hard fought, but I think I'm going to have to give the edge to UConn. Kansas just recently lost in their tournament play, and when they lost to Marquette, they just didn't quite look like the extremely high, star power team that everybody says they are. And I have no doubts that they're still an amazing team, but I mean, it kind of showed everyone that they're human and they can lose, and I think I'm going to have to give UConn the win on this one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but at the same time, I'm going to go against you on my pick. We got the last 2 defending champions. Kansas recently picked up Hunter Dickinson in the transfer portal, and I think playing that top 3 team of Marquette, I think it really put a test on them, and I think they're going to bounce back and they're going to beat the number 4 UConn team.
Well, I'm not a really big college basketball fan. I don't watch a lot of it. I probably should watch more, but you know what? I'm going to go with the higher seed on this one. I'm going to go UConn over Kansas on this.
All right, our next game, we got number 11 Gonzaga versus USC. This pick, I'm a huge Gonzaga fan. I think Gonzaga is going to win this game easily. I'm sure Bronny James isn't going to help much in this game, but I do think Gonzaga is going to be the powerhouse with Graham Ike and all their star powers that they got in the transfer portal. I think that they're going to easily win this game, and it's not even going to be a test for Gonzaga.
I'm in agreement on this one. Gonzaga, they're ranked 11th. I think maybe they should be ranked higher than that, but I'm definitely going to go with Gonzaga over USC with this game.
Yeah, I'm like Jordan said, I'm an extremely big college basketball fan, and I'm still honestly a little bit butthurt about the Gonzaga-Purdue game because the first half, we kind of shut Zach Edey down. We played just overall better basketball than Purdue, and then we went out in the second half and just played horrible. But I think that shows that this Gonzaga team is really capable of doing some really good high-level basketball, and I don't think USC just really has any star power to step in their way and stop them. Like Jordan said, Bronny James, he might not even be cleared to play this game. I know he hasn't played any games yet so far this season. This may or may not be his first game back, so he might be a factor. But yeah, I think this Gonzaga team is just overall a better team than USC. Yeah,
watching Gonzaga play this year, they're a little bit more unique than Gonzaga has been in the past. Normally, Gonzaga, in my opinion, has been more of a second-half team than their first-half team.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think this year is a little bit different. I think their first-half team is a little bit better, and hopefully they can pull ahead a little bit in the first half and secure a win for them.
Yeah, I think so.
Our last college football game, we got number 17 UNC versus Florida State.
This one, I'm going to go with the Tar Heels on this one. Florida State, they haven't really been playing very well. They're not ranked. I just don't think I can see a way that they're going to pull this one out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. Trust me, I'm the biggest UNC hater there is, and Duke alike. I don't like either of the schools.
Yes, that is
but,
true.
I have no opinions on Florida State either, but I know UNC. They're a credible basketball program. They always have good coaching, and even though they might not be the highest rated team this year, I still just wouldn't want to bet against them and their basketball program as a whole. So I'm going to go with UNC.
Yeah, UNC's been popping up a lot on my TikTok recently. I've been watching their handshakes, and I don't know if I can bet against those awesome handshakes that they've got going. I don't think Florida State's really a good college basketball team, so I'm just going to have to go with the blue blood here, and with number 17 UNC winning that game pretty easily. Our next category, we got some NFL games. Our first game, we got 49ers versus the Eagles, which is going to be an amazing matchup in my opinion. I do think that it's going to be a battle of the offenses, but I think the defense could be a big talking point in that game, and it could win the game for a certain team. The Eagles have looked a little bit rough recently. Their last game against the Bills was a very close game, in my opinion, a lot closer than it should have been. So I'm going to pick the 49ers in this game to win it against the Eagles.
Yes, the Eagles, they didn't play as good as that have been against the Bills, but I think they're going to bounce back going against the 49ers, and just the tush push. The tush push is one of the best moves. 92% successful with it, so I'm going to go with their good old center, Jason Kelsey, and I'm going with the Eagles on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with Jordan on this one. Like he said, this is going to be an amazing game, and I'm sure it's going to be just absolutely right down to the wire. But the main reason I think the 49ers are going to win is just kind of like Jordan said, their last game or two has been a little rough. You kind of saw, if you've been online recently, you've seen the tweets or the TikToks, whatever you watch about Jalen Hurts' face after their kicker made the field goal. And you could just tell that he was kind of disappointed in himself and the offense, and that they had to put themselves in that position for a field goal to keep him in the game. And yeah, I think that they're not quite as high as they were just a little earlier in the season. So I think the 49ers are going to get the edge on this one.
Alrighty, we're a little bit split in that one. Our next game, we got the Broncos versus Texans.
Yeah, I'll start this one off. If you guys don't know, I'm probably the biggest Bronco fan you'll ever find in your life. My entire shop in my house is completely decorated with Broncos gear. I have a Broncos logo stamped into the floor of my shop. So I'm as diehard as it gets. And CJ Stroud has been amazing this season. He's the best rookie in the NFL for sure. And then Tank Dell has just been an amazing connection for CJ Stroud. So, that's obviously going to play a factor. But come on, I got the Broncos winning this one. I think we have the secondary that can stop Tank Dell. Jaquan McMillian and Pat Surtain, I mean, they're two really good young cornerbacks, and I think they're just going to be able to shut it down just enough for, Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, to pull this one out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with the diehard Broncos fan over here with that whole decorated shop. I think Broncos are going to be able to pull this one out against the Texans. Russell Wilson, he started off kind of slow this year, but I think he picked up the reins, and I think he's got it down. I think he's going to do well in this game.
I'm going to be going against you two on this game. I'm going to pick the Texans to win this game. I think C.J. Stroud's just been playing very good recently. I will give it to the Broncos secondary. They have been playing pretty good. They got some good cornerbacks. But I think the Texans overall, their offense has just been rolling, and I think they're going to beat the Broncos that game, and I think it's not going to be as close as people may think. Our last NFL matchup, we got Colts versus Titans.
This one, I'm going to go with the Titans on this one. They've been playing pretty well, and the Colts, they've been kind of struggling a little bit, so I'm definitely going to go with the Titans with this game.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Justin. I mean, I don't think I've watched, a game of either team recently, so I've just kind of heard about how they've done, and it seems like the Titans are having a little bit more of a successful year, or maybe just recently they've been a little more successful. But I'm going to have to go with the Titans on this one.
Like the last matchup, I'm going to disagree with you guys. I think the Colts are going to win this game. The Colts did not lose a single game in November, and I think with Gardner Minshew playing quarterback, he's just been getting in the click of things, and I think he's learning this offense very well. That Michael Pittman Jr. matchup with him is a great connection, and I think that the Colts are going to steamroll the Titans. So that's all we got for you guys with our game time. You guys got anything else to add to those games?
Yeah, if you guys noticed or not, we got jazz music playing in the background. When we got in my truck, we were just joking that we could put it on, but then we put it on and we kind of liked it, so we were like, hey, might as well just leave it on, see what the people think of it. So Just let us know in the comments if you like it. I mean, if you like it, maybe we could keep it on for game time and keep doing it every week, but if not, just let us know and we won't do another episode with it.
Yep, and we're bringing to you next our first guest of our podcast, which will be Austin Arnett.
All right, welcome back, guys, to Local Legends. Today I'm here with my guest, Austin Arnett. Austin?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you doing this with us. So first off, the first question I have is, where did you go to school, where you're from, for some people that might not know you, where you went to college, just a brief description.
Yeah, so I grew up in Clarkston, Washington, went to Clarkston High School. After that, I did a few years of college at Lewis Clark State College, but college wasn't exactly for me. I kind of had a different path in mind, so I didn't go too long to college.
Yeah, how many years did you go to college?
I think I did about a year and a half, probably.
Yeah. And then did you just pursue martial arts just right after you dropped out of college?
I mean, I kind of always knew martial arts was kind of my career goal.
Yeah.
With fighting or teaching, just kind of martial arts was kind of what my goal was and what I wanted to do.
Cool.
But so I kind of just went to college just because that's just kind of what you do after high school. It seemed like I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do, but just kind of college is kind of what you do. So I just went to college just to do it.
Cool.
And then about a year and a half in, I kind of realized I could be spending my time doing stuff that's going to kind of get me to my goals more than what college was for me. And that was training full-time, competing full-time, being able to travel and train in MMA. So I decided to stop going to college and just pursue mixed martial arts.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what was like your first, or when did you first start learning MMA, or like what was your first like memories? How young were you?
Yeah, so I mean, I trained with my dad in karate and kickboxing when I was, 3 years old probably. As soon as I was walking and could throw some punches and kicks, I was kind of doing it. So I pretty much my entire life. But I got serious into like actual MMA training specifically, probably in like junior high. So junior high age, I started training with the adults and stuff and taking it a little more serious. And then I had my first MMA fight, cage fight, when I was 15. So that was my first fight. And then, just kind of went off from there. Kind of fell in love with it. Had the first fight, won it, and then was just kind of hooked and all in from that point on.
Yeah, so like once you started, you said you started at 15, and once you started getting into fights, what was like? So I know you went to the UFC and you did like UFC fight nights, but before you went into the UFC fight nights, what was like your biggest fight that you were a part of? Like where was it? Like what venue?
So Well, I've had a couple, like, before the UFC, there was this organization called Titan FC.
Mm-hmm.
They're a national organization, so they have events all over the country, and they're televised and everything. So that was my first big one. That was, I want to say, like 2015, probably 2015, and that one was actually in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
But it was on TV and everything, so that was kind of my first breakthrough fight that kind of got my name out there, and people started kind of recognizing me.
So it's kind of like the UFC, just like a smaller organization.
Yeah, it's a smaller
Gotcha.
organization than the UFC. Yeah, so if you're thinking, it was like if you kind of relate it to like baseball, I would say it's like AAA. So it's kind
gotcha.
Of like, so that
Okay.
kind of helps relate it a little bit.
And then how would you describe the UFC fight nights? Because I know a lot of people, like, they watch the main UFC events, but not a lot of people watch, like, the fight nights. So, like, just kind of what was it like? Like, the crowd energy, the size? I mean, like, was there any, like, I assume Dana was there, but was there any other, like, celebrities watching? Or just kind of what was the fight nights like?
Yeah, so, I mean, I fought on a few different cards. I fought on some UFC fight night cards. I was also on I fought on a UFC pay-per-view card as well. I wasn't on the pay-per-view part, so I was on the earlier prelim part. But that one was in Australia. And then Anderson Silva was the main event that night. So I fought on that one, and some celebrities, I guess. So front row was Matt Damon and Chris Hemsworth.
Wow.
You know, Thor. So if you watch Avengers, you know Thor. So Matt Damon and Chris Hemsworth were in the front row. Those are
That's
probably
awesome.
they're pretty big celebrities. Those are probably two of the big
no
that I
kidding.
fought in front of.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then you kind of pulled me into my next question. I was just going to ask, kind of like, what was the moment like when you found out you were going to be fighting on a pay-per-view card? Like after the fight nights, when you found out you were moving to the next level, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really change anything. I mean, once you're kind of in the UFC, I mean, there's fight night cards and there's pay-per-view cards are kind of the two different ones. And I mean, but once you don't really notice the difference. So like I fought even on fight night cards. I fought in North Carolina one fight, and it was a sold-out crowd, and so I mean, there's 20,000 people there.
Wow.
For that, and then like I fought in Argentina as well, same thing. It was 20,000 people in arena. It was a fight night card, but I mean, it's the energy and the intensity of it doesn't really change. So you don't really notice a difference too much, honestly, from pay-per-view to a fight night card. There's probably more people watching on TV, but that doesn't really change for you, personally.
Right. So, and then also, I just wanted to ask, kind of, like, have you had any personal experiences with Dana White? Because now he's, like, he's really popular in, like, social media, but, I mean, if you have, just kind of describe him and, like, what type of person is he when, like, the cameras are off, or, like, you're just having a conversation with him, if you've had any with him? Yeah,
so I've had a few, he's been at a few of my fights, and never had like super in-depth conversations with him, but I've talked to him for a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes here and there. And I would say that he's pretty much what you see. What you see is what you get with him.
That's kind of how he seems.
The way he does interviews and podcasts and stuff, that's kind of just how he is.
Right.
Off camera and stuff too. He's a pretty real person. He has his beliefs, and he's very true to them. And I think he's easy to talk to because you know what you're getting with him.
Right.
He's not two-faced. He doesn't act one way and then do something else. He's pretty straightforward, and he kind of is what you get. And I always appreciated that about him.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then just changing gears a little bit here, just to some kind of like trivia question. So if you're before a fight, what is like your go-to pre-fight meal just to make you feel good before a fight?
So we cut quite a bit of weight when you're competing.
Yep.
So I cut weight to, just like wrestling. So you're cutting weight. After you make weight, which is the night before the fights, we kind of always have this, a big meal. Mine was always like a fettuccine Alfredo, like a chicken fettuccine Alfredo with a lot of bread.
Lots of carbs.
Always my go-to, yeah. So
there you go.
Chicken fettuccine Alfredo with a ton of bread.
There you go. Maybe me and Justin will try that out. We got a wrestling tournament tomorrow, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Don't overdo it. I will say that. You can overdo it, and then you just feel heavy and fat and slow. So
it's an all-day tournament, so maybe we'll take it a little light.
Yeah, maybe after the tournament's over, go.
Yeah, there you go. Well, then that's perfect for what I was going to ask you. So say you have a big win, then after that, what are you celebrating with? What do you want to eat after that?
Oh, ice cream. I'm all
ice
about
cream. There you go.
Like
I like
thing.
it.
Pizza and ice cream, but yeah, I could eat could eat a gallon of ice cream after I'm done competing for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So then more into like your martial arts school that you run. So I don't know. My dad's Todd Clovis. He, like Drake Randall, works for my dad,
Yeah.
if you know. So
Okay.
I was just going to kind of ask more about like Drake, and I know there's been some kind of buzz about like Dimitri, and I don't know, you're creating some fighters that are kind of getting a little buzz, and like just do you see any similarities in any of your fighters to like when you yourself were like younger and a fighter trying to make it? Like, do you see any similarities?
Yeah, I mean it's changed a little bit, like just the landscape of MMA. When I was first kind of coming up and on the scene, it wasn't quite as big as it is now.
Right.
And the avenues to get to the UFC was a lot tougher, so it wasn't as laid out as it is now.
Right.
It's a little bit more straightforward now. People have a better idea of what they need to do to get there. When I was kind of coming up, it was you're just kind of hoping and praying and just winning as many fights as you can and hope that you got noticed and called up.
Yeah.
Now they have more avenues. They have like the Contender Series and stuff that is a little bit more laid out. I was on the very first season of the Contender Series, so nobody even really knew exactly what it was. I went on it. Now it's very
kind of a big
clear
deal
what it
now.
does. Yeah, and it's really clear what it does for you and what you need to do to get into the UFC from there.
Yeah.
So it's changed a little bit in that aspect, but similarities. I mean, I would say Drake's got in MMA later, so he's in a little bit different path. He came from a wrestling base,
right?
But he got into actual MMA a lot later in life. So he started training when he was about 25, I think, 24, 25.
Yeah.
But he has a wrestling base, so he's on a little bit different path. He's doing really good. I have no doubt that he's going to be able to do some pretty cool things and take it pretty far. Dimitri's a little bit more similar to me in the aspect that he started younger. So he started training with my dad when he was like 13, 14 years old in MMA. And he had his first fight. I think he was 16. So I was 15. So kind of a little bit more similarities with Dimitri's come up as to mine.
Right.
And he's a hard worker. He's more of a striker, which I was too.
Yeah.
He likes to keep it on the feet. So we kind of have some similarities, and him just being so much younger than Drake. Drake's a grown man. He's got a kid. So it's a little bit different, him starting out MMA right now. To me, it's a lot more similar to how I was, being a young kid, kind of going all in on it and seeing what can happen with it.
Yeah. And then, so you kind of touched on it a little bit with Drake, but do you think like any of your fighters have like a potential path to go to the UFC and end up, say, in the Contender Series or on a fight night or even like a pay-per-view card?
Yeah, no, I think there's a few right now. I mean, Drake, Dimitri, and then another kid named Melvin Joy.
Yeah.
Who's
I've talked to him a few times. I played baseball with him for a little bit.
Yeah, so Melvin's another one. So those three probably have they have a really high ceiling right now and a lot of potential to do. It's all kind of it's a longevity thing. So you got to be able to stick it out for a long period of time, and that can mentally dwell on people more than physically. Even it's physically a brutal sport, but even mentally it can be taxing on people. So it's just kind of all can they stay with it long enough? Can they deal with the trials and tribulations of the fight game and be able to push through that and stick it out for as long as they need to make it? And if they're able to do that, I have no doubt like all three of them should be able to make it to the UFC.
Yeah. So, and then, what kind of, like, what would the path look like? Because I know, like, from, like, people that aren't quite educated on fighting, like, people that go to Drake's fight, because, like, I went to one in Clearwater, and everyone realizes, like, Drake's never lost, and it seems like he makes, like, pretty quick work of his opponents. Like, he just takes them to the ground and works from there. So people are kind of wondering when he's going to get that next kind of jump in like popularity and fighting better people. Like where will that come, do you think? Is he going to be in like I don't remember what you called it, but like a kind of like the UFC but a little smaller, or like when do you think that'll happen?
He's getting closer. Just you don't want to rush. Everybody sees the fights, but they don't always see the training. So they see what he does fight, and he's doing really good, which is awesome. That's what we want. But he's got to make jumps in his training as well. So
that's true.
You got to move him at a certain pace, and you got to set up fights that's going to build him and make him better. So each fight, you try to give him a little bit of a different challenge, but you can't just go from a guy, like this last guy he fought, that guy's pro debut. It was his very first pro fight.
Yeah.
So you can't go from someone making their pro debut to fighting someone in the UFC. There has to be some building steps along the way. So the way I have it kind of laid out, and kind of give away all the secrets, but
for sure.
A few plans of how to build him up with a little jump here, a little jump there, but it's going to be a few more fights before he's getting a super big one that's going to be like televised or something like that. But he's on the path there.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. It'll happen sooner rather than later. But people are anxious, but people don't understand the fight game and they don't understand.
Take it slow. Yeah.
They don't. No, nobody really understands it on the level that people that are in it do, and it's a lot different than other sports. So, people are watch basketball or football or whatever. The path is a lot more clear. You go to high school. In high school, you get a scholarship for a D1 school. You do good at D1, you get drafted to the NFL. Like, it's very clear and laid out. Fight game's a lot different. It's a lot murkier. It's a lot more complicated. There is politics involved. It's a little bit different, and I have a hard time understanding that because they're used to their other kind of team sports and watching how laid out and clear the path is. Fight game's a lot different.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I was just watching a video with Bo Nickel, if you know who that is, the UFC fighter who went to Penn State, and he said something like, "There's not a sport where people think they know more, but they actually know less. Like they think they know what's going on, but they really know nothing." And that kind of touches on what you said.
Very true statement.
Yeah. And then just switching gears, just to talk about just your dad a little bit, because we watched a few interviews of yours, and we know he's like a super big influence in your life. And just like, how does he influence like your goals with your MMA studio and just like what you want to do moving forward?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of just everything that his goals were my goals as well. Like we shared a lot. We shared all the same interests. We were very close. And we had all the same goals, the same vision, the same things that we wanted to do. He knew that he was a little bit later on in life, so he always knew that I was going to be the one that probably would have to see most of this through, would have to see the gym go to a different level. He knew that the fighters that we were bringing up, that I was probably going to be eventually the ones that were going to have to see them through the big show and make them as big as they could be. So he kind of always prepared me for that. And I'm just trying to carry on the legacy. He was a really good person, a really great coach, great mentor to so many people and helped so many people's lives. So I'm trying to do my best to carry that on and, make him proud and make sure that the Arnett's name lives on and keeps changing people's lives and doing the best we can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure he'd be super impressed. I mean, seems like you've done a really good job just from like the kind of outside perspective.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Just one last question for the interview, just to keep it end on a kind of a lighthearted note. We watched the interview and you said probably one of the favorite things you've done is you traveled the world with your dad. Yeah. And we just wanted to know what is your absolute favorite place you've ever visited with your dad, and just kind of what did you two do that made it so like memorable and fun?
Ooh, yeah, there's a lot. Argentina was pretty cool. That was a pretty fun trip. South America is it's a lot different than other places. Like we've been to Australia, Abu Dhabi, Argentina, Hawaii, kind of all over with the fight game. Yeah. But I'd say Argentina was probably the coolest. So, for a few reasons. One, the culture is very cool over there. Yeah. We just loved the culture, the food, the environment, the people that we met there were really awesome. So that was part of it. I won my UFC fight there in Argentina too, so that was a pretty cool moment after the fight, celebrating and having a good time. So I'd probably say that Argentina was probably one of the cooler places and cooler experiences that we got to share together.
What city were you in Argentina?
Oh, I'm trying to remember now. Let's see. Hold on.
Probably something hard to pronounce or hard to remember.
Let me see. I don't know why I'm blanking. Buenos Aires. Yeah.
Oh, that's the really big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huge city.
I think the biggest city in Argentina. Yeah, Buenos Aires, which is the capital.
Gotcha. And then I guess my friend Jordan, he just has one question for you.
Yeah. So, being a promoter of the MMA in our valley here, how difficult is it to bring in fighters to face your fighters that you're training at your gym?
It can be tough, just because The goal is to give all of our guys tough fights. So I know that I'm gonna bring in the toughest guys to fight our guys as I can find. So making sure that that's always coming across, that we're not trying to give any of our guys a freebie and trying to give our guys gimme fights. Which, if you look at our last card we did, the main event was one of my fighters, Brian McElroy, trains with me. He's actually like my best friend. He lost his fight. He lost the main event against a guy from Seattle. So I think that kind of just proves right there, that's my best friend and a fighter that I've trained from the start. And I gave him the toughest fight I could find, and he got that day. So I think just making sure that not playing favorites and making it known that I'm going to bring the best fighters I can to take on our fighters, and I'm confident in our fighters, and I'm willing to put them up against the tougher opponents that I can find.
Yeah, awesome. Hey guys, it's the Local Legends. I'm back with Justin and Jordan, and we just got done recording with Austin Arnett. He was a super awesome guest, and I'd just like to say thank you to him again. And yeah, we're just going to talk about some interesting moments. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Thank you, Austin. I just want to say thank you for joining us. Something I found really interesting about your conversation with him is the fact that he started training at 3 years old, which is extremely young. Like, thinking back to when I was little, you're pretty small at that age. It's like, what would you even be doing? You're just kicking a mat? Or I just found it very interesting that he started his UFC and his fighting career at 3 years old.
Yeah, I agree.
That was pretty sick.
I guess that's just kind of what you get when you're raised in a fighting family, though, because like you said, his dad was a fighter all his life, so I think that's just kind of what you get. That's just how he's been his whole life.
Yeah, what I found interesting is he had his first cage fight at 15 years old.
Yeah.
When I was 15 years old 3 years ago, I was even scared to go play high school football because I was nervous. I was kind of smaller than everybody else, and I had to start on the line when I was 5'9", 190 pounds. I got really nervous. But to be in an actual cage fight at 15, I don't think I would be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's super impressive. Just being able to be 15 years old and walking into a cage and just have it's a one-on-one, and you're just fighting one of them until either the time ends or one of you gets knocked out or choked out. I mean, that's just pretty impressive to be able to do that at 15.
Yeah, I think that just shows like his maturity and like the drive that he has for UFC and how willing he was at such a young age to be able to go out and pull off a fight like that at 15 years old.
Yeah, and then he mentioned he started off with Titan FC before he went to the UFC, because I asked him, how do you get from like the small local fights to the UFC, kind of what's the bridge in between? Because really, I mean, I had no idea. I know how fighting works a little bit, but I don't know much about the actual game itself and like how it works. So I found that super interesting that there's like little leagues like the Titan FC, for example, that are like UFC but smaller. He mentioned it was like AAA in baseball, and yeah, I just found it super interesting that there's other leagues that you don't really know about that kind of bridge the gap in between local fights and UFC fights.
Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense to have those smaller leagues, like similar to, like you said, like every sport has like, it's kind of like sister league, which is a little bit smaller, and it allows players to come up through and get through the rankings and possibly get up to that highest league. I just thought it was very interesting to see that perspective of him starting out in one of those lower leagues and making his way up to the big UFC card.
Yeah, it's a good perspective, but then also it really makes sense because you don't want having your first debut fight at like 16 years old and you're going against a veteran who has been in the UFC for a long time. That's just not smart. That's how you actually get hurt. So I think that's really cool that they have the smaller classes and smaller types that can bring you up into the UFC.
Yeah, and then another thing he said, where I asked him right afterwards, just kind of how Dana White is, and he said he's pretty much the same person on camera versus off camera, which I think is pretty cool because just recently the UFC is it's turned into a massive organization, and Dana White, he's had his controversies, he said some controversial things, but it's pretty cool that he, on camera or off camera, he's kind of the same way, so then you're not really getting a shady guy. It's just an upfront, honest guy, and he just says what he wants to say, because recently, he's been on countless podcasts. I've seen him everywhere, and not just recently. It's been years, but I just think it's pretty cool that he's the same guy on versus off camera.
Yeah, me personally, I think Dana is more of a CEO before he is a social media person. So I think it's really unique to have a social media person that is very true to himself and very what you see is what you get. So I think it's really unique to be able to have that person on social media, but also leading a business like the UFC and it being so productive and so efficient that I think it's just really good for the growth of social media and some platforms like the UFC.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's very rare to find someone like that who what you see is what you get on or off camera. He'll act the same way. He doesn't try to suck up to anybody. He says what he thinks, and he says even if he agrees or disagrees of what you think. Another thing that I found interesting was after a big fight, his favorite thing to do with a win, his favorite thing to do, he would celebrate with pizza and ice cream. And I think, well, that's just sweet because that's exactly what I want to do. Then he told me that he could eat a whole gallon of ice cream, which then I thought, wow, I can't even do that. And trust me, I've tried. So that's just pretty cool that he would just go for pizza and ice cream after a big fight to help him celebrate.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Typically you think of fighters cutting weight and all they do is eat super healthy food. So for him to say right after a fight all he wants to do is eat ice cream, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, like him talking about how like he rewards himself after a fight, and I thought it was pretty interesting for it to be ice cream and pizza. The last thing that we found pretty interesting was when he started to talk about the fighters that he's producing out of his studio. One of them that was a big talking point was Dimitri, who has a very similar style and growth that Austin had when he was growing up and going through the ranks. Dimitri, like he pointed out, started at a very young age like Austin. He started training with Austin's dad, actually. So I just found it very interesting that Dimitri is very similar in style and overall fighter like capabilities and growth as Austin. So Austin's is able to relate with him very well when it comes to teaching him and coaching him throughout his UFC career.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he's found someone that he's training that's like him. I mean, he said he's a striker, Austin was a striker, so those two blend very well. I think probably maybe he's not easier to train, but it's more relatable when he trains, so maybe he's be able to go a couple steps ahead with him since he's such alike.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's super interesting just that he kind of sees like a younger version of himself almost in some of his fighters. But I thought it was also interesting, you know, how he said Dimitri is very similar to him, but then he also mentioned Drake is very different to him. And because Drake wrestled his whole life and then just got into UFC when he was like in his mid-20s, and then Dimitri, who's been doing, you know, MMA since he was like an early teenager or even a kid, I just think it's interesting how those two, they can be, you know, they've had such different upbringings, but they're both excelling really well in the fighting game. I thought that was pretty cool that they both can do so well, but come from such different, you know, growth points.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all we got for you guys in this episode. Thank you for joining us, and hope you guys come back and join us with our next guest.
Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in.
Yep.
Austin was awesome to have, and yeah, that's all I got. Justin?
Make sure to hit the like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put it in the comments for us.
All right, see you guys.
See you guys.